Hey everyone. Deepti, we're so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
A round of applause for Deepti, everyone. So before we begin, I just want to do a raise of hands here. How many of you have seen Love is Blind? Okay, there's a lot of you here. For those who haven't seen Love is Blind, it made history as one of the most popular reality TV shows on Netflix. It involved 15 men and 15 women dating over several weeks. And over that time, they had to decide whether they wanted to commit to each other, decide whether to get engaged, and then decide whether to get married. But there was only one catch. They couldn't see each other before they decided to commit. So, Deepti, what made you decide to be part of Love is Blind?
You know, I get asked this question all the time, and my answer has always been, I wanted to find a unique love story. But now I'm realizing that it's much deeper than that. And to give you a little bit of insight into that, I'm going to take you into my childhood. I moved here when I was 8 years old, and it was really tough for me because I had already established a foundation back in India. I had friends, school, and family. But moving here was tough because, one, I was in a completely new environment. Two, I didn't look like anybody. And three, I couldn't understand my classmates. I couldn't understand my teacher, who I was learning from. So there was this language barrier there. And I was still a happy kid, though. But coming into my teenage years, something shifted in me. There was a lot of self-loathing. I lacked confidence, and I was overweight. And because of that, I was really bullied. And so, oddly enough, I turned to food as a coping mechanism. And this vicious cycle started of where I would binge eat, and then I would feel guilty about that binging, and then I would purge it. And so I developed an eating disorder of bulimia at a young age. And it wasn't until my late teenage years and my early adulthood that I realized I couldn't go on hating myself like this anymore. I had to make a change. I had to view myself differently. And I lost 80 pounds, which is a big deal. Thank you. And because of that journey, it's so interesting. Now I see Love is Blind as something completely different. It was special, unique, because someone is falling in love with me for who I truly am and not because of my physicality. Your core values and your beliefs, those things never change, but your physical appearance might.
I think so much of what you said is so important because people don't talk about eating disorders in such a public way. People don't talk about the reality of judgment when it comes to physicality. You spoke a lot about on Love is Blind. You also made a statement that made waves during Love is Blind that you had not dated an Indian man before. And that created a lot of, conversation. I'd love to ask you, what do you think is happening in media and society that influences, how we think about romance, how we think about who is attractive? How has that affected you?
Yeah, I feel like society kind of tells you who is attractive, who's deserving of love. When I was growing up, I didn't really see many people that looked like me in big media. I would see like beautiful blonde models. And so I became very whitewashed growing up. And, I was attracted to white people, and it's kind of embedded in me and carries on with me. And I thought to myself, oh, like having a white boyfriend or a boyfriend in general meant that I was winning. But I feel like culture and society really plays a big role on how we view relationships, and it changes our impact on how what we expect out of them as well. And it's not always our reality.
And that brings us to this big day that we saw in this earlier clip, which is here you are about to get married, we think, to an Indian man. This is not something you had expected. And that is not actually what happened. Bring us to that moment and inside your head when you said those words, I choose myself, which became such a powerful mantra for so many people.
Yeah, the days leading up to that moment were nothing short of difficult for me. On the one hand, I really cared about somebody, but on the other, I was realizing that I was trying to prove something when I didn't need to. I know who I am. I am a good daughter, I'm a good sister, I'm a good friend, and I knew who I could become, and that is a good wife, a good mother, future mother, and a better version of myself along that journey. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need to prove anything. And marriage and relationships are hard work. You have to show up for them every single day. And in that moment, in this experience, I realized that I was being tested. Had I really learned my lessons? Was I able to apply it into my reality? That's what that moment meant for me. It's to invoke growth, to understand that people's opinions do not define our reality.
I think that's really, really powerful, because that moment became so powerful for so many people. And what really struck, I think, audiences and me was how positive and how confident you were in that moment. Can you share a little bit about what were the experiences you went through that led to that confidence that you have, that positivity you have, and what other people can learn from your confidence?
Yeah, I used to be a people pleaser, and I think to some degree I still am. But in that moment, I realized that I really needed to, learn that affirmations, saying things like, I am confident, I am beautiful, I am strong, in the mirror really helped me realize that, I can change my outlook of myself. And pairing that with meditation, which helped me live in the present moment, and through journaling, which helped me organize my thoughts. And my favorite thing ever, fitness, really helped me get to the next version of myself. And especially with fitness, I wouldn't see results right away, and I like instant gratification, so it was really tough for me at first. But what it taught me was that sometimes motivation is not enough. Consistency is what gets you to the next level. And I was trying to create this healthy, happy environment in my mind so that my actions and my behaviors could align with my thoughts.
Speaking of, choosing yourself, we're seeing this kind of phenomenon where for so long society has told women, you must do this, you should do this. You're seeing more women step out of those boxes, step out of those expectations, including South Asian women. And we've seen this in an example of you as well. Why do you think this is happening now?
We are shifting away from an old mindset. And women, especially South Asian women, they're not living in a male-dominated society anymore. Women are stepping out of their comfort zone, and they are not just living just for their families. They are now living for themselves. And we are more than just a marriage. And divorce, especially in the South Asian community, it's not appropriate. And so we tend to basically we accept the fact that we should live in unhappy relationships. And a perfect example of this is a story of a American Pakistani photographer, Sanya Khan. And she went viral on TikTok for speaking her truth about cultural standards, and she was divorcing her husband. And sadly, she ended up getting shot by him. And I believe that this is because change is very uncomfortable. It brings out the worst in people sometimes, and that tension builds. And that is exactly why it's so important that we talk about it. We have to normalize not staying in unhealthy relationships. And until we start seeing a difference, we're going to continue to see uncomfortability.
And I also want to talk a little bit about your parents, because you weren't alone that day when you said no. Mm-hmm. You had your mother, you had your father, you had your siblings beside you. What role have your parents and your support system played in your journey so far?
Yeah, my parents are so incredible, and this is the progress that I'm seeing in them, is that, they exemplify the type of marriage that I want in the future. They have never conformed to the norms of gender roles. And so my mom has always been career-oriented and has always been there for the family. And my dad has always stepped up in the household and while still working. And so it's this give and take energy that they have. If somebody needs it, the other person steps up while the other can work on their career. And so this is just such a beautiful give and take type of thing. And I really hope that I can have a marriage like that.
Okay, so now we're gonna have to ask a little bit more about, Deepti. You have, you heard it here first, you have an upcoming book. It's a memoir.
Yep.
Can we have a round of applause? So, we want to hear more about, obviously, all the things going on. And In this book, you share so many more of your learnings in much more detail. So we'd like to ask you, how do you think that there can be more Deeptis in the world, and how do you think people at an individual level can keep choosing themselves?
I would say be vulnerable, share your stories, because there is power in that. Vulnerability in itself is a superpower. When we break down our walls, we tend to have this domino effect into the lives of others around us. And that makes a huge impact. That's where we connect, and that's where we see change and strength. And I've been through a lot of obstacles in my life, as I'm sure all of you have. And I've worked really hard to put in the effort to become a better version of myself. And we have to continuously share those stories so that we can be better. And that's why today and every single day moving forward, I am choosing myself. And I hope that by sharing my story, it inspires all of you to do the same thing.
Awesome.
Thanks,
you. Everyone. Another round of applause for Deepti. Thank you.